Hey guys, it's February 24th, 2020, and you are listening to the podcast that no one listens to, the Punk Hiro Show, and I'm your host, as always, unfortunately for you. Let's get started. Yeah, we're going to talk a little sports. It's not my thing, but let's do it anyway. Saturday night, it was Tyson Fury versus Wilder 2. Oh, excuse me. That's a great thing about your own podcast, is you can burp if you want to, and you don't have to edit it out. I'm too lazy to edit it out, so the burp will remain. Anyway, this fight, I'm sorry to say that it looked like amateur hour. You mean to tell me that this is the best two fighters that boxing has to offer in the heavyweight division? Looked like a tough man contest. It looked like I've seen better bar fights. Come on, guys. Is the talent pool really that low? I mean, it is shallow. We are in the shallow water when it comes to boxing. So, Tyson Fury won by knockout. By TKO, like he said he was going to. But the whole thing was suspect. It just looked like crap. And I wonder if these guys are just the best because there's nobody else in the game right now. I wonder if a lot of guys that are coming up are choosing MMA instead of boxing. I mean, let's go back into the 70s for a second, where you had, Foreman, Frazier, Sonny Liston, Muhammad Ali. It was stacked. It was stacked. Okay, the 1980s, that was considered the Mike Tyson era. And man, this is going to be controversial, but it's my podcast, so fuck it. I think Mike Tyson was overrated, massively overrated. He never fought anybody. I mean, he fought Michael Spinks. Michael Spinks was in his 40s. He fought Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes was in his 40s. He got knocked out by Buster Douglas. The first time he ever fought anybody with any kind of skill whatsoever was Holyfield, and he got knocked out. He got beat by Holyfield twice. And then he fought Lennox Lewis, and he got his ass kicked by Lennox Lewis too. His last fight, I can't remember who his last fight was against. Is McBride. Yeah, McBride was his last fight. And in round 6, the beginning of round 6, he refused to get off of his stool. And that's when I lost a lot of respect for Mike Tyson as a fighter. As a person, I've grown to like him a little bit. I've watched some of his stand-up, if you want to call it stand-up. It's quite funny. It's really, really entertaining. The guy's had a very intriguing life and things of that nature. But as a fighter, you've got to answer that bell. I don't care. I would rather burn out than fade away any day of the week. And the problem with Tyson was this. He was going through all these guys. Every time he would punch them, they would crumble from fear. He had the psychological aspect of the game in his back pocket. But the first guy, they didn't fall down from one of his punches after 3 rounds. Tyson didn't know what to do. Tyson didn't know what to do. And if they didn't just fall over, he got frustrated. So, he used pit bull brute force to knock these guys out. But anything that started going past the 5th round, he was exposed. He was exposed as merely a power puncher. And that's it. He really had no boxing skills to speak of. He was outboxed by a lot of people. He was outboxed by Buster Douglas, for Christ's sake. All right. Let's talk a little wrestling. AEW, All Elite Wrestling, who are going head-to-head with their show Dynamite against WWE, formerly WWF, their show NXT. And AEW wins again. You gotta love that. They beat WWE by 100,000 viewers. and they're almost getting 1 million views per week. That's great. That's great for a startup company. If you like old school wrestling, where they treated it as a true contest, where they treated it as if it were real. If you come from the era of, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Magnum TA, the Four Horsemen, Nikita Koloff, you're going to love this. This is great stuff. Nick Bockwinkel, if you want to mention some guys from the AWA, Larry Zbyszko. We'll go in depth in some wrestling on some upcoming shows. That's kind of my bread and butter, that and horror films. And speaking of films, I thought I would give my list of my top 10 favorite films, non-horror films of the 2000s. So we'll be going from 2000 to 2010. Number 10, based on the book Championship Vinyl, High Fidelity, starring John Cusack and Jack Black. John Cusack owns a record store, and Jack Black is his employee. Great flick, love it a lot. There's, I think, a TV series right now on Hulu based on the book, but I don't know if it's any good or not. Number 9, based on a comic book, Ghost World. Ghost World was directed by Terry Zigwoff, who also directed the documentary Crumb, which would have been on this list, but it was just a couple of years shy. Robert Crumb is one of the weirdest artists of all time, and in that film, Terry Zigwoff followed him around. And there's a character in Ghost World played by Steve Buscemi who is very reminiscent of the Robert Crumb character. With that said, this movie is about two girls, Thora Birch and Scarlett Johansson. It's a coming-of-age story, and they're about ready to leave the nest. They're about ready to leave home, and they're looking for apartments. This is when Thora Birch runs into Steve Buscemi, who is playing the Robert Crumb role, and it's a very interesting flick. I know a lot of inside stuff about this flick because my friend Ezra Buzzington played Weird Al, and he told me some great stuff. I'm not sure I can go into detail right now, but maybe I will later, another time. Number 8, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. This is the only musical that I have on my list. This is a British film about this transgender person, or a she-male, or a tranny, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know all the politically correct terms, and I'm not going to learn them, so there you go. So she's babysitting this guy, and she's trying to start a band, and she sings all these songs and stuff. Later on, the kid grows up and becomes a rock star, and he uses all the songs that Hedwig used to sing to him when he was a little kid. Now Hedwig is doing all these like dirt floor gigs and stuff, singing in front of like 20 or 30 people, where the kid that she babysitted for is like this mega star, enjoying all the fruits of fame and fortune and all that stuff. Quite an intriguing film. Number 7 is a documentary called The King of Kong, A Fistful of Dollars. This chronicles Billy Mitchell and his defeated score on Donkey Kong. Nobody plays a better heel, or nobody is a better self-proclaimed heel than Billy Mitchell. If you like old stand-up 1980 arcade games, you're going to dig this flick. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I believe Charlie Kaufman won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay or Best Adaptation. I'm not sure. He won something for this. It's all about Jim Carrey having his memory erased because he finds out that his girlfriend had him erased from her memory. So in return, he has her erased from him. Just their portions, just her memories that reside in his head, and she only had his memories that reside in her head. There's this bizarre company that can do that. They can completely erase people from your memory, but you also retain you know, your overall memories, just all memories of this particular person gets erased, but somehow they fall in love again and blah 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 blah. So yeah, great flick. Number 5, Risk Cutters, a love story. Love this flick. It's about a guy who commits suicide because his girlfriend leaves him. Then the girlfriend commits suicide because he kills himself and she feels responsible. So they both go to hell, kind of hell. And people in hell sometimes kill themselves too. And each time they kill themselves, the level of hell is a little bit more severe. So the first level of hell is not too bad. Like, it's sort of like you kill yourself the first time, and the world's kind of like the Bowery in New York City, you know? And you kill yourself like, again in that life because it's too hard to handle, and it gets a little bit worse. And, like, when you kill yourself the first time, this first level of hell is like the pizza's not quite as good. All right, number 4, Pan's Labyrinth. Number 3, adaptation, again, based on a Charlie Kaufman script, directed by Spike Jonze. This is all about Nicolas Cage trying to adapt a New York Times best-selling book that's about orchids, and he incorporates himself into the story. The movie is all about him and his twin brother, also the rivalry that they have. He actually dedicated the end of the movie to his deceased twin brother, Donald Kaufman, who does not exist. So yeah, quite intriguing. Number 2, The Royal Tenenbaums. This is all about a group of kids that were raised by Gene Hackman, and they're all geniuses, but they all suffer all kinds of different elements because their dad was not the best dad. But it's all about their hate and coming to terms with their hate for their father. And number 1, my favorite movie of the 2000s is Wonder Boys. This is probably, in my opinion, this is absolutely the best Michael Douglas movie of all time. It has Michael Douglas, and it has Robert Downey Jr., and it has Rip Torn. Almost said Rip Taylor. Yeah, there's no confetti flying around in this movie. I can promise you that. Basically, Wonder Boy is a writer who's had one success, but he can never repeat that success. So Robert Downey Jr. is the editor for Michael Douglas, and he keeps on breathing down Michael Douglas's neck for this new script that he's working on. Or the rough draft of his novel that he's working on, because his first book was called The Arsonist's Daughter. Yeah, I can't believe I pulled that out of my ass. But a great flick. Highly recommend it. I think it's the best movie of the 2000s. And that's my list, guys. And I'm out of here. And I hope you've enjoyed the very first podcast of the Punk Hiro Show. And until next time, I am out of here.